cheated on my wife 3 years ago. She agreed to forgive me if we opened the marriage, but now I live in agony every day. So my wife, 39, found out I, 41, had been hooking up with a woman I met online who lived 2 hours away. She was waiting in the lobby and saw us coming down from the room. She left me the next day. We separated for 8 months, and there were terrible. My wife thought since our sex life wasn't enough for me, and that she was sure I would cheat on her again, we might as well open the marriage. I relented. We decided, in brackets, she decided, not to tell each other when, where, and with whom. On the inside, I'm dying a little each day. Whenever she takes a shower after coming home from work, whenever she rejects my advances, I think that she has been with someone else, and that kills me.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thanks for joining me here for the Monday mix-up. So let's mix it up. First of all, to the OP from the opening video, that was the ultimate Uno reverse. Old girl's playing reverse psychology on you. She's not cheating. She didn't open up the marriage. She just gonna fuck with you to the end of time. Woohoo! Y'all better learn. Y'all better start learning real quick. Before we get into the Trump fraud trial today and all the updates from that, let's get into this. There's a lot of white saviorism circulating right now, especially when it comes to adoption. So get comfy, pay attention, and we'll talk about it on the other side. You know how this goes. See you in 2 and 2.
I am not trying to bash anyone, but I feel like as an adoptee and an adopter, and also having 2 adopted Indigenous children, that I want to kind of speak up on this. It seems like people are either on one side or the other. Adoption is great and beautiful and a way to expand your family, and then adoption is horrible. They're being taken away from their birth mother and stripped of rights, and just the extreme loss that children go through with adoption. And I'm not popular with any side of it because I am both. I am an adoptee and I am an adoptive mom. It is so important that we listen to adoptees, children that have been adopted. I have made so many mistakes and I say so many things that are wrong before I know them. Even though I have my own experience, there is other people with totally different experiences, and both are valuable. I know a lot of angry adoptees. I actually used to be one, and think about it. If you've never had a voice your entire life, no one listening to you, your birth parents have all the rights, and then the adoptive parents have the right, or the foster parents, really there is no voice for adopted children. Even when I was an adoptive parent and adopting children and fostering several children, their guardian ad litems didn't know them. They didn't know what was best for them. No one really looked out for the adopted kids. I think it is very important as an adoptive mom that when I say something inappropriate or that I don't understand something appropriately and I say something that's not correct, I should always apologize and fix what I'm doing instead of defending it. I know people are so furious about Chaz and what he has done to the adopted community. I watched something where he lied to social workers and social workers just let that slip through the cracks. Totally unacceptable, but happens all the time. Do I think that Chaz was probably a good adoptive father to those children? Probably. It seems like, he provided a good, stable life for them, but that does not negate the fact that things were not done appropriately. And that's my whole point in everything, my whole page, is that things are not done properly. I mean, there's regulations for reasons, and so many times they aren't followed, and the adopted or foster child, is suffering at the end of the day. Not saying that this happened with Chaz, but as a fellow adoptive mother, I think that instead of being defensive, he should just understand and seek clarification and apologize. I don't know what Mama has to do with all this, except for that she loves Chaz. I guess they're really good friends. I don't know. I follow both of them, but I think people are being too hard on her too. Like I get that she has a huge platform and needs to be careful what she says and who she backs, but she is only human too. And how well do we truly know someone? At the end of the day, I am just glad that this is all coming to a head, that we are talking about adopted children and foster children and adoptive parents, because so many times the children are overlooked and misunderstood and not fought for. When an adoptee uses their voice, it is so important that we listen. Things won't get better unless we do. So I hate making people mad at me. It's probably part of my past trauma, so I'm not meaning to upset Chaz or Mama Tot or Ward of the State or any of the adoptees that have been brought into this and are speaking out about this. But let's remember, we're all human. This is a very important topic. Instead of bashing people, let's educate people as adoptees, because if someone really doesn't go through that, they don't understand. And so my mom used to always tell me, you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So the best way is, let's just be kind of how we teach people about the trauma that adoption truly is. And like I always say, if you are struggling with your foster or adopted children, please reach out for help. There are resources available, and be a voice for the discarded voices.
The discarded voices, that you say that you are one of those discarded voices that became one on the other side, that's no different. You say that you used to be an angry adoptee, but now you're not, and you're quoting your mother. You say that when you mess up, you can just apologize. You say nothing about educating yourself on it, which you should be educated on, but it seems like you took your perceived, because we're taking your word for it, experience as an adoptee and weaponized it, because there was no reason for you to point out that you had indigenous children under your care. Why do you have indigenous children? And then you go on with the, oh, just educate, just have kindness, have compassion. And then you're like, oh, I'm glad this is coming to a head so we can finally have the conversation. The conversation has been had. The conversation has been ongoing. And I love how you're only quoting big creators. So not only do you have malintent with perpetuating adoption as an adoptee, instead of pushing for family reunification, and it was not missed upon me where you tried to slip in there that, oh, they used to be with their family, other family members that, cared for them, and they wasn't doing shit for them, so I had to come in and I had to save them. And Chaz ain't a bad parent, he came in, he had to save them. You're the worst of the worst. You're the worst of the worst. You're what we would call in the Black community a Sambo. Somebody who has gone through the hardships, and you learn the intricacies of how other people got away with the hardship so you could do the same thing, so that you could have adjacency to your oppressor. So we just continue in trauma. Because at no point did you bring up therapy. At no point did you bring up actually listening to people. Maybe it's because the vast majority of people who were checking Chaz weren't white. But let's get into this Trump New York fraud case. And keep in mind, this is a bench trial, not a jury trial. So let's get all the way into it, okay? Trump appeared at times bored in court and even sometimes yawning. Don Jr. was present in court and he was sitting behind his father. Trump was also prodding, like nudging his attorneys to argue with the prosecution and the judge. He used camera crews outside the court to spread his witch hunt narrative. And he had a thing for glaring at Attorney General Letitia Jones when they were outside the court. But when they were in court, he did the same thing that he does when Jack Smith shows up. Trump's legal team attempted to claim in court that the judge had said things previously that he didn't. They seem to be regretting not opting for a jury trial because the grandstanding is not having a positive influence on the judge. Now, regarding today's proceedings, the opening statements contain snippets of some depositions that were played for the court. The defense keeps saying that the attorney general has no case and that there is no intent to defraud. And we already know from the partial summary judgment, fraud has already been determined to not only exist, but to be rampant. And Trump's defense team keeps saying there's no victim, so there's no crime. Who said there's no victim? The judge has continuously told Trump's team that's not true. And there's been a lot of posturing regarding Trump's legal team. And Trump's legal team is basically, they're acting as if there's a jury in there. They're arguing points that have already been ruled on. They're arguing points that have already been ruled on. The only person who's impressed by this is Trump. It's like they're performing in court to continue to be on his payroll, and history shows us he doesn't pay bills. Now, like I said before, Trump showed up to avoid the deposition in Florida as if that cannot be rescheduled. And according to Attorney General Letitia James, Trump will not be called to testify until the near end of the trial. And more than likely, he's going to plead the fifth all up and down the place. Because, he was like, yeah, I'll take the stand. I'm going to testify here. I'm going to testify. And we know that's not what he's going to do. Not at all. Unequivocally, no. Unequivocally, no. Trump knows he cannot withstand the scrutiny of cross-examination. He cannot handle anybody disseminating anything that he says. It's no different than a foot washing Baptist. It's no different than any of these mega church maggots. But now that we've gotten caught up with that, let's discuss what's currently bringing the GOP glee.
This is Republican lawyer Mike Davis. Listen to him laugh and giggle as he wants to put kids in cages.
Ben, I have 5 lists ready to go, and they're growing. List number 1, we're going to fire. We're going to fire a lot of people in the executive branch, the deep state. Number 2, we're going to indict. We're going to indict Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and James Biden and every other scumball, sleazeball Biden, except for the 5-year-old granddaughter who they refused to acknowledge for 5 years until the political pressure got to Joe Biden. Number 3, we're going to deport. We're going to deport a lot of people, 10 million people and growing, anchor babies, their parents, their grandparents. We're going to put kids in cages. It's going to be glorious. We're going to detain a lot of people in the D. see Gulag and Gitmo, and list number 5, I'm going to recommend a lot of pardons. Every January 6th defendant is going to get a pardon, especially my hero Hornman. He is definitely at the top of the pardon list.
Now, that would almost be comical if he didn't work directly with the Supreme Court and the Heritage Foundation. Fucking wonderful.
Do all these people who worship Trump realize that in all technicality, Barron Trump is an anchor baby? And if you're saying that you're going to eliminate the whole line of anchor babies within the United States, that means that Trump would need to be deported also. They didn't think about that. They don't think about the history of anybody who's saying what makes them comfy cozy and gives them the goosies, right? You want to put them in a cage? You know what? We trying to cage the tangerine tyrant also. Go ahead. It is amazing that the party of the Constitution has no idea what's in the Constitution or how anything works. How anything works. Because I even laid out for y'all on TikTok the immigration timeline regarding legislation and who was allowed in and who wasn't. But okay. Now, sticking with the theme of the GOP, coming from the Business Insider, Cassidy Hutchinson says Ted Cruz, Raphael himself, he would have to be booted too. Cassidy Hutchinson says Ted Cruz told her not to be a tattletale after she complained to Mark Meadows that Cruz crashed a Trump tarmac arrival in Texas. Here are the key points. Cassidy Hutchinson, in her new memoir, recounted her dismay with Ted Cruz over a 2020 incident. Hutchinson carefully planned for Texas Governor Greg Abbott to greet Trump during a tarmac arrival, but Cruz showed up on the tarmac, which infuriated Hutchinson because it wasn't the plan. Now, we've already discussed how obvious it is that nobody in the GOP really has any respect for Trump. How many of them, just like the Georgia GOP, has been fervently moving away from Trump and creating their own factions of the GOP, which historically is accurate. Political parties in the United States are no different than Protestant denominations. You don't like what's wholly going on over there, you take the bits and pieces that you like, and then you make your own you make your own over here. You just got an umbrella with a whole lot of offshoots. It is what it is. But they know that Trump spews the rhetoric for a certain demographic. Now, this demographic by far is not the majority. It is not. But they're crazy enough and violent enough and willing to risk it all, throw their whole lives' careers away to intimidate others into voting for them. And that's all they care about. People being intimidated into keeping them into power. But I thought everybody was on this small town mentality where we take care of our own, especially the military, the cops, the first responders. And as much as they say that they love first responders, we got Blue Lives Matter and Blue Lives flags all over the place. Where's the EMTs? Where's the firemen? Where are the merchant marines? Where's the Coast Guard? Where's like I said, sticking on brand with the GOP, coming from usnews.com. Arizona's governor didn't mysteriously step down. She was in DC less than a day and is back now. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs' brief trip out of state this week has been wildly misrepresented on social media and conservative news sites. What? Outwardly conservative news sites are getting it wrong? Because let's face it, there's no mainstream media outlets that are owned by liberals. But let's go. Arizona's governor was out of state for a day this week, prompting false claims that she'd abruptly resigned or vanished entirely. Here are the facts. Claim: Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has suddenly resigned, leaving the state's treasurer in charge. AP's assessment: false. The Democrat, who has been the target of misinformation since taking office this year, was out of state for meetings in Washington for a day. So the state treasurer briefly served as acting governor. Arizona's constitution calls for the next highest ranking elected official physically in the state to assume the role in the governor's absence. Hobbs returned to Arizona on Thursday and resumed her duties, including attending an event with President Joe Biden. So everybody who took to social media with this story, sometimes it is not best to be the first, but it's always best to be the accurate. Patience is a virtue, and research is key. Now let's take a look at who has been putting in the complaints for all these book bans, especially those in 2021 and 2022. Take a look.
Hi, I'm livid. Why? Because I just learned a staggering statistic that just 11 people were responsible for most of 2021-2022 school book challenges. That's right. 11 people. Something like 60% of the book challenges that happened during that school year came from just 11 adults. One mom said that she was going to get a book challenged every single week and gloated that she would ensure that no one would have access to those books, even if they weren't her kid. As a parent, I understand the need for age-appropriate materials, but there's a big damn difference between me opting out of a book for my own child and me opting out of a book for everybody's child. The majority of those challenges were books written by or about people in the queer community and non-white individuals. Now these book challenges are creeping into public libraries that service entire communities. So is it really just about the kids? Or is it about eliminating stories that you don't agree to? The hoods are showing.
Now, if it was about parental choice, why do white women feel that they should take the choice away from other parents? Now, when raising my children, if there were things that, now I'm a firm believer in explaining things to your children on the level that they are and amending that as they grow older. But if there's something I don't want my child exposed to, it's my responsibility and my responsibility alone. And for me to set those parameters. If my children go outside of the parameters, it's up to me to handle that. It is not for me to be more concerned about raising other people's kids and making sure other people's kids can't get X, Y, and Z. Because if my focus is on other people's kids, who's got their focus on mine? And have you noticed that all of these family first Christian values people always end up in divorce, always end up with their kids going no contact or low contact with them? They want to play the great parent on TV. And this also has a lot to do with the pseudo tyrannical Christianity that is preached all over the United States. But okay. Coming from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Appeals court pauses Atlanta VC fund grant for Black women. Conservative groups sued the Fearless Fund, alleging racial discrimination for helping Black female founders. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta on Saturday ordered Atlanta-based venture capital firm Fearless Fund to pause grant applications supporting Black female founders while a lawsuit alleging racial discrimination works its way through the court. White women have a plethora of avenues to go through should they want to become venture capitalists, should they want to become entrepreneurs. But you can't let Black women do it. The ruling is the first legal win for the nonprofit American Alliance for Equal Rights, a conservative group. See, y'all got to stop just thinking, oh, they're for us because of the name that they put towards them. They know the keywords, the buzzwords to get your attention, okay? SEO is a whole job. It is a whole career. The ruling is the first legal win for the nonprofit American Alliance for Equal Rights, a conservative group started by Edward Blum, not even a woman, a key activist in the successful challenge of affirmative action in college admissions, a racist. The Alliance sued Fearless in early August, alleging their $20,000 small business grant program was racially discriminatory because it was only for Black women. Now, you would think that a group that says it's for equal rights would have the same energy for legacy admissions that they do for affirmative action, right? And affirmative action, especially in college, greatly benefited the model minority and white women. And in corporate America, it greatly benefited white women and white women alone because they could say, under the guidelines of affirmative action, they hit the pinnacle. They did what they needed to do. But no, this alliance isn't suing universities regarding legacy admissions. They're not suing regarding the continued redlining and blockbustering. They're not suing regarding higher interest loans being given to Black people regardless of credit score. Credit scores that, a lot of us don't realize we're older than the whole credit score system. Did you think of that? The grant application was supposed to close on Saturday, September 30th, but now must remain open until further order of the court. No grant winner can be decided yet. So, psychological warfare, allowing people to believe that they have a chance and to go forth and start putting things in order as a just in case, just to be let down. Because we know what he's going to do, just like he did when it came to the affirmative action case. He's going to get a bunch of people that fit the complexion and fit the dynamic that can go against the Black community, especially Black women, that already have backups in place, that'll go on this social media campaign and get people riled up. And we know who's already sitting on SCOTUS that should have already either not been seated or need to be impeached expeditiously, but we can discuss that at a later time. And he's going to rile up the masses. And give the impression that the majority of the people want things his way. But where's the equity? Where's the equality? Where's anything? See, it sounds good on paper, and this is why they want to fervently change the educational system, because they don't want you to be able to pick apart things and really think about it. They want you to go by that Hearst yellow journalism, that sensationalized headline, that sensationalized story that grabs you in and makes you change. It makes you get mad at people without reading any further for any details, without doing any further research, because that's all you need, right? That's all you need is a good headline, darling. But rounding out news in the GOP, you know those former staffers, former talking heads for Trump? What are they doing now? What could they possibly do? Let's take a look.
Forbes issued a scathing warning to companies all over the United States this past weekend, telling them that if you hire any of these former Trump cabinet officials, we're just going to assume from that point forward that everything that comes out of your company is an absolute lie. Now, we all know Forbes is the paper of repute, the magazine of repute for the Fortune 500 crowd, right? I mean, after all, that's the Forbes Fortune 500. They're the ones who do that. They're the ones who you want to suck up to if you are a corporation. You want to make it on their list. You want to make it to their parties. You want to be their friends. And here they are telling the most powerful corporations in the United States, if you go anywhere near these people, we're done with you. Here is actually what was said in the article that they posted. Forbes will assume that everything your company or firm talks about is a lie. We're going to scrutinize, double-check, investigate with the same skepticism we'd approach a Trump tweet if you hire these individuals. And that includes people like Betsy DeVos, Elaine Chao, Mick Mulvaney, Stephanie Grisham, Sarah Matthews, Matthew Pottinger, and of course the usual suspects of Kayleigh McEnany, Kellyanne Conway, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Sean Spicer, if he's still kicking around out there. Basically, if you spent time working with Donald Trump, Forbes is telling their connections in the business community, don't hire these people. Now, I have no sympathy for any of these people. I don't care if they don't ever work another day in their lives. There's another group of people, though, inside the White House who are also struggling to find work for essentially the same reason. Those are the average, everyday White House staffers. According to reports over the last few weeks, these staffers have been unable to secure jobs. A lot of them have been unable to secure interviews at other places. Like, nobody wants to hire anyone who worked for the Trump administration, whether you were a cabinet official, sitting at the head of a major government department, or if you're just the coffee boy. It doesn't matter. You worked for Trump. You have that stink on you. You have the taint on you. You are stained with Trumpism. And now a week ago, that wasn't as bad as it is today. It was still pretty bad. They were still struggling to find work. But after what happened on Wednesday, suddenly, all these brands, all these companies, all these entities out there hiring people are aware of the fact that you were part of the guy that started this. You were part of the guy that encouraged this. You're toxic. You're dangerous. We can't have you on our staff. For the average everyday White House staffers, I do feel a little bit
I feel no compassion for any of them. You sat back, you heard, you listened, you watched, you stayed. And you're part of the people that are like, oh, it was so much better during Trump. Well, if it was so much better during Trump, why did you stay? Because I remember when the economy was truly booming, people were bouncing job to job and they were like, you don't pay me what I'm worth. I'm out. Couple days, a week or two later, they'd have another job. They were not missing bills. Okay. But you stayed. And when investigations came up, we didn't see your name on anything. You weren't showing up to say anything. I don't give a fuck if you were the one that when he hit the button, you were the one bringing him the Diet Coke. You had information that you didn't tell and you stayed. You stayed. You knew that these people were not the majority. You could have left and people would have created positions for you. But you stayed. You stayed because you bought into the bullshit for your own reasons. And here you are. And the sad part about it is, as many of these former employees are, we should be bombarded with social media posts and interviews on major networks and news articles, but we're not. You are still part of the problem, perpetuating the fucking lie. So guess what? Since you don't believe in socialism, don't apply for shit. Since you believe hard work will prevail, figure it out. Since you want to talk down about the houseless and immigrants and everything else, get it how you live. Get it how you live. I'm not one to be swayed by propaganda that all of a sudden we are supposed to have sympathy and empathy for people who made their own conscious decisions and are still making excuse me, their own conscious decisions. They're still propagating lies, knowing the truth that they're living. So let them hope and pray that those lies come to fruition and swoop in and save them. Because get somebody else to do it. Get somebody else to do it. As always, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you learned anything, please share it with a friend, share it on your social media platforms. And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. I'll see y'all tomorrow.